We are good. Boy, that was quite an introduction. Shouldn't let my wife hear it. The first disclaimer. This is a lot of personal opinion and observations. I've been doing this about 50 years. And granted, I got started on the East Coast where DXing is a little bit easier, but it's not that bad here. Despite everybody telling you you're living in an RF black hole in the Midwest, you know, I've been up at Lou Gordon's place, K4 Victor X-ray. Granted, he's got some nice antennas up in Hannibal, but I could consistently place in the top 3 in any international contest. So you may not come in first, calling it a pile up from the Midwest, but you're still going to get out. Don't blame the geography. As far as what I'm talking about, it's opinions. If you got a different opinion, you're on next month to give the presentation. I got hooked on DX 1968. Some of you guys been licensed before that, but 75 watts, crystal controlled. Luckily, my father had a 2-element quad, but I got on 80 meters for my first contact. Worked a guy in Buffalo and. Went on 15 meters the next day. First 3 contacts were Germany, Congo, and Nigeria. I said, okay, this is what I like. And I got cards from all of them. I'm going to be talking mainly about CW and sideband here. Nothing digital. It's just funny you should mention the Tapper show coming up, in that I heard the strangest comment. A guy mentioning, he was talking to a friend on phone, and he said, I haven't seen you on the air lately, which means everybody's staring at a computer screen now, looking for people to talk to, instead of actually hearing them. With the, the FT8 now, out there now, that's all you're seeing. You don't even hear who you're working, you just see them on the screen. And the main thing I did want to mention was the intimidation factor. I remember the first time I grabbed a microphone. It's a little intimidating because it's one way. You don't have the feedback like in a telephone conversation. So there's going to be a second disclaimer here. Basically, if there's 20 meters is dead. 15 meters is dead. If these bands don't come back, all of this evening is going to be wasted. The DX openings lately have been like 2 hours. If you get on between 9 and 11 or maybe even 9 and 10 in the morning, sometimes the band will open to Asia at night, but it has been pathetic for about 6 months. The strangest thing is JT5DX in Mongolia is the only signal coming through at about 9 o'clock on 20 CW. So if you need it, he's there. So what's DX on HF? Basically, you're defining it as anything outside of US and Canada. DX is just an abbreviation for distance. Distance is in the eye of the beholder. The easy bands, 20 meters and up, when they're open, 17 and 12 have been a boon for people with less than adequate, I won't call it adequate, less than super stations. You could put a piece of wire up on those bands when the conditions are right. DXing is very easy because you're not overwhelmed by people with big arrays. These bands haven't been there forever. A lot of people aren't bothering with big antennas. Don't rule out 30 and 40 meters. 40 meters sometimes at night. Europeans are 20 over 9. So why do we do this? I often think of, somebody asks me, what the heck are you doing? What's the kick you get out of DXing? And I think the closest you can come to is it's fishing. Are you going out there, just to goof around, with a 6-pack and nothing on your hook? Or are you going for volume? You're just trying to catch as much as possible, or are you waiting for the big rare one? It's the thrill of the hunt. Are you an award chaser? Collecting wallpaper. This has never really been easier with the way QSLs are handled and confirmations now, you can get awards unsolicited. You work 3 Russians with special call signs. The next thing you know, you've got a PDF file in your inbox. Congratulations, you've just won the Mikhail Gorbachev, award. And it's neat. You print it out on your paper, hang it on the wall. Click. Okay, maybe you just want to talk to those strange foreign lands. First time I really tried that, I spent a lot of years just hello, goodbye, 5-9, who's next? I called a guy in Ascension Island, on St. Helena, ZD7, down in the South Atlantic. He wasn't busy. He wanted to talk. I just said, what the heck do you do on St. Helena? He said, we don't do anything. Every 6 months, we basically get anybody who needs money gets on a boat, sails 800 miles to Ascension Island, works for a few months, brings some money back, and goofs off the rest of the year. I didn't know that. So this is why you get into DXing. For the newcomer, the lucky thing is the predominant language is English. Good, bad, or indifferent English, and you'll hear some pretty poor English there, a lot of it from the United States. And just, an important fact, logging and QSLing is all done in Greenwich Mean Time, Universal Coordinated Time, whatever you want to call it, the time and date. If you're keeping a logbook and you haven't converted it over to GMT, if you're still keeping time, a logbook, if you're keeping a logbook, and if you're keeping it in Central Time, the guy in Russia is going to get your card and say, I have no idea what that is. And it is amazing. I've been a QSL manager on and off for years. The number of people who would just send me, a card. I was a special event station on the East Coast, and they're putting the time. This is in Pacific Daylight Time, and I just put a note on there, and I say, sorry, your QSL was delayed for 6 months, but I don't keep my clock on Pacific Daylight Time. Get it over to GMT, and just remember, when it's Friday night here and it clicks over to midnight, it's the next date in your log and your QSL. As I was talking, mainly CW, the good thing, if you're trying to get into the world of CW DXing, and I'm not talking going gung-ho, I'm just talking making contacts, getting comfortable. It's a little different world on CW than phone. It tends to be a little bit formal. If you're talking to any European, except out of England, but anybody who speaks non-English, they'll address you as dear, so-and-so. It's or abbreviated to DR. As soon as you're talking to someone in Japan, they'll call me John-san, and I'll go back to Yuki-san. It's kind of a little formal deal you go through. And it becomes automatic. The intimidating part for a lot of people, though, the CW speeds, you're going to be at least 20 words a minute. 20 to 30 words a minute is typically what people are doing, if they're not in the rag chewing mode. If they're just looking for rare DX, with calling CQ, you'll find that's the probably 27, 28 words a minute is typical. There's also another funny click that goes on along with the Dear John and the Yuki-san, the greeting of the year. It's interesting. Every few years, somebody picks up a new one, like ahoy out of Scandinavia, hey, or poka, which Russian, or cheerio. And all of a sudden, for a couple of years, everybody will sign off saying that. It's just a funny quirk of working DX. Let me give you an example of a simple QSO. If you're talking to guys who don't speak English, it's going to be very simple. Just look at this here and try to make sense out of it. No non-ham is going to understand any of this. So you just start out with a CQ, and RA3DM just throws his call in once. That's all he needs. If I don't catch it, I got to go did it, and he'll send it again. RA3DM, RA3, good morning, you're 599, QTH, Missouri, name is John, break. Good evening, dear John. So he's coming back, 599 in Moscow, Op Igor, 73, do svidanya. That's it, okay, Roger, fine business, dear Igor, I don't know, we'll never kill off FB for fine business. Nobody knows what the heck it means, but everybody says it. Thanks for the QSO, 73, good DX. On to the next one. This is a pretty typical exchange, if you're not looking for someone to be a pen pal. Shorthand. Very, very shorthand. And, take your lead from the other guy. If you're in a contact like this, you'll notice Igor didn't come back with anything more than the signal report, his location, and his name. Just what I sent to him. Take that as a hint. That's his end of the conversation. If he throws in the weather and the antenna, he's looking for another round. But that's a good hint. If you don't get anything more than you put into it, that's all he wants out of the contact. Okay. Yes. What's that? Oh, which part? Oh, the CW?
If you don't copy it, ask you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's basically work on the assumption that you only have to send information once or twice. You can always ask again. But the most frustrating thing is if you're calling CQ and the band is wide open and you've got 7 or 8 Europeans calling, you don't want a guy spelling out he lives on Brighton and Finsbury 50 miles north of London. Look, I know you're in the UK. So keep it short, and especially don't repeat it. If a guy wants to know your county, you can come back to him later. Some of the issues, verbal diarrhea. There is nothing more frustrating than a DX station who's trying to make as many contacts as possible. The band's fading out, the sun's going down, and finally, some Willy Billy 4 in Georgia, oh man, Igor, I've been trying to get you for 4 days. The wife's been listening to me yelling here, and I got to feed the dog, but I really thank you for. And you can sense the rest of the guys waiting to work this guy are going nuts. Igor is going nuts. Come on, I don't need this. People are waiting. You pick that up from listening to it. Verbal diarrhea will kill you. Click. Okay. The dreaded last 2 letters. If you're in a pileup on phone, do not just yell, "Tango, tango." No, you have a call sign. That's an illegal ID. And it drives DXers and contesters nuts. Because it means they've got to do twice the work. Look, I hear you. If you'd given me your whole call at once, we'd already be well into a contact and I'd be working the next guy. It's terrible. Italians tend to do it, and the problem is they're running the 5 kW amplifiers. They don't need it. Their whole calls will get through anyway. But this started probably 40 years ago when lists started. This was understandable. You'd get some poor DX station who's never worked anybody. As soon as 2 people call him, he has a stroke. So what somebody would do is say, hey, I'll take a list of stations for you, and I'll have them call you one at a time. So as soon as they've taken a list, the guy would say, okay, everybody, last 2 letters. The whole idea was, if he's getting your last 2 letters, the DX station doesn't know the whole call. You're obligated then when he says, okay, tango, tango, make your call. Okay, then you've got to go Alpha Echo 0 Tango Tango to make sure the DX station is really making contact with you. That's where it started, and it just got out of hand. Last 2 letters will peg you as a lid on the bands. The next part to go with it, of course, is repetitive calling. You can tell pretty much if you're wasting your time, and especially if you're background noise. You know, if you're hearing guys that are just, if you're working there with 50 watts to a wet noodle in the basement, and you're hearing guys pegging your meter, calling this other station, you might as well just back off until the pileup gets worked down. The other part about the verbal diarrhea is it's the language, it's communication. You can talk for 5 minutes to a guy who's going to come back and say, Roger, 73, old man, because that's the extent of what he understood from you. Click. Okay, everybody remembers Strother Martin. What we have here is a failure to communicate. One common deal, everybody who does it doesn't know he's doing it. Running a call sign together on CW. What you get is something like that. If you don't hear the beginning, you have no idea what you're up against. Listen. Now see, if that's your call, you know where the mental break is. If that's not your call, wait a minute, okay, I got KB6 FDK. No, a B6 would be China. Okay, no, it must, and this is a very common thing you hear, from some new people on the air. They know where their call ends. They mentally sense it there, but they're not communicating it. Failure to communicate.
You think those letters are too close together?
That was normal spacing. But lousy phonetics. This is a guy who's been around forever. K3 Japan, Germany, Japan. Okay, K3JJJ. Pick carefully. The phonetic alphabet is out there for a reason. You may have some catchy phonetics when you're amongst friends, but when you're on the air, go to the book. The failure to recognize language limitations, as I mentioned before, the guy who just rambles on, telling everybody his cat's sock size, and he just comes back and, Roger, my friend, 73. He had no idea what you're talking about. These people who learn English overseas, God bless them. They get on the air, and they overcome the intimidation factor of DXing and working a foreign language. The other thing that is a big hang-up in pile-ups when you're hearing a lot of people calling a rare station, don't ask them a question that you can just Google. Oh, how long are you going to be on the island? Well, if you just click on his call in QRZ, chances are it's going to say he's going to be there for 4 weeks, or where are you located? Where's your city located? If he's in a conversational mood, that's great. But a lot of DXing is more people than you want on frequency trying to do something, and don't tie it up, because once again you can just hear the fuming of the people waiting. Oh my God, did he have to ask that question? Few basic operating hints. Just follow the leader, the timing and operating style. Is the guy, is he listening on his frequency or a little bit off? Is he taking tail enders, where basically you talk over the last guy he was talking to? Or is he just waiting, he wants a clean break and he doesn't want to hear anybody until he says QRZ again? Pay attention to the pattern that's being set up. Okay, we're having clicky problems. Okay, using the highest frequency band open, that's goes without saying as far as propagation. You'll notice it's just conditions have been so lousy lately. But you get on 20 meters in the morning, you start hearing Europeans. All of a sudden, they start getting weak. Well, that's because the absorption layer is building up. Signals are getting wiped out on 20 meters. Time to go up to 17, if it's open. Sometimes the maximum usable frequency doesn't get there, but that's your best bet. And I've been surprised, it's like 50-50. Half the time 20 is dead, it's because the bands have gone. But the other 50% of the time, it's because the MUF has gone up to 17 meters, and that's when you start calling CQ there. The highest frequency you can go is going to have the least absorption of your signal, assuming the band is open. Matching speed on CW. If somebody's calling at 20 words a minute, don't call him at 30. That's probably his limitation. And if he's going at 30, he's going to ignore you at 20 if somebody else comes along at 30. It's just common sense. This is the interesting part about DX. The one rule everybody throws out about DXing is listen, listen. That's how you find the rare stuff. You got to observe band conditions. You got to dig people out of the noise. But the opposite of that is somebody's got to call CQ. And 10 meters. You'd be amazed. As soon as they put a contest on a weekend, have you ever noticed how a dead band all of a sudden has thousands of people on the weekend? It was open during the week, too. Nobody called CQ.
How about field day is another example? It's like bands are packed on field day.
Yep, that's it.
Field day, everything is-
Yeah, everybody's out. And, to some people, calling CQDX, you're an elitist. Look, you're all big people. You can do what you darn well want to do on the air. If you want to call CQ Pakistan, you can do it. You're not going to get any answers. But there's nothing wrong calling CQDX if that's what you want to do. Important point, after you've made a contact, don't repeat your call unnecessarily if he's already got it. If conditions are marginal, if he comes back, gives you a full call and gives his name and everything, and you go back and repeat your call 3 times, he's going to think he's got it wrong, and he's going to start correcting it. So don't identify more than is required if he's already got your call sign. Just thinking about the time to be on the air, you're going to be stuck by the season and the time of the day. Keep an eye on sunrise and sunset in the world. Just about anywhere you can find some software that'll show you where the terminator is between day and night. And if you're wondering what the band is like, over in the middle of India there, just think of they're a little lower in latitude, but it's 2 a.m. there. What did the band sound like for me when it was 2 a.m.? And you start realizing, he's probably not going to, he's going to be asleep, and he's probably going to have the same lousy band conditions I had 2 o'clock. The band is not open. So just think in terms of where the sun is worldwide. In general, keep your CQs short. A lot of back in the novice days, it wasn't unusual to hear people calling CQ for 5 minutes. They're desperate. The problem is we have short attention spans. You are going to get better results with 3 short CQs than 1 long one. You can always do another one after a short CQ. If you're on CW, calling CQ with a narrow filter, don't forget to tune your RIT. People are not that good at zero beating. People have different preferences for the tone they want to listen to. I listen to a very low frequency tone around 400 hertz. That's what I like. I have to set my RIT to offset by that amount. People are basically calling me, 300 to 400 hertz higher than my frequency to compensate for what I like to listen to. So you just got to get used to using that. You'll find a lot of guys are calling CQ You hear people calling them and they don't respond because they've got a 250 hertz filter plugged in, and they don't think, hey, somebody could be 200 hertz higher calling me. Can't find them. This point is something a lot of people have been burned on. You know, oh man, there's a ZK1. I need North Cook Islands. Well, let me get the antenna warmed up, turn the antenna. 30 seconds later, 30 guys are calling him. There was nobody there when you found him. Chances are darn good you don't have to have the amp on or the antenna pointed at him to make that contact. Give it a try while the amp is warming up. Yeah, very good chance. The other point about waiting, in the world now of internet communication, as soon as that guy calls CQ, it's going to pop up somewhere on the internet. And that guy's going to have a pile up within 30 seconds. If you heard him first, get in there.
Who collects the data for the internet?
Yeah, there are two ways. There are actually people reporting stations on a bulletin board. I'll show that in a minute. And there are also there's automatic software out there with software-defined radios, skimmers, that are copying CW and putting it out.
Is there a software I can use, like for SSD? I mean, but call sites are really fast, and you'd like to just not have to worry about listening over and over and over again to the call.
No, the software is in between your ears. Sorry, that's what needs the training. But yeah, if you hear something something you want to work, jump in. Don't wait until you're comfortable in your seat and you've got a couple extra ice cubes in your drink. Very important. Have just your call programmed into your keyer. If there's any question, if you're trying to work a guy and he's screwing up your call, I have heard this with so many of my friends. If a guy comes back and has your call wrong, you try to correct it, you make it worse. This is just human nature. All of a sudden, you're nervous and you start messing up your own call because you know it's become more important. The guy's having trouble with it. You want to just have it set, in your programmable key, or just push the button. Takes all the pressure off. If you've got a 1x2, or 2x2, or a 2x1, many people have been burned by the letter K after a CQ because, if the spacing isn't quite right, the DX station will add a K onto the end of your call because it looks too short. Or else just make sure you get that spacing in there. And the other thing is the dreaded call that ends in a K, where people will tend to drop it off. The only thing almost as bad was my first call, WA2EAH, where I had to start sending WA2EA5 for the people who couldn't count the dits. So if you're looking for help on the internet, there's the DX cluster. So this is where is it? DXsummit.fi. This is run out of Finland. This is the most popular one. You're looking at what people are reporting. It's the call sign on the left. So you've got an OE2 here reporting. He's hearing this JA on this frequency at this time. So this constantly scrolls as people report it. It's just you go over to the side of this. There's a place. If you hear something, you enter your call, the DX station you're hearing, and its frequency, and it will pop up later, in a minute or so on the bulletin board. So that's how you catch the DX. The problem is you've got a lot of people reporting DX who can't copy CW or can't copy phone. You can't trust the call letters.
Nope.
There's a classic out there. There's a fellow in Brazil, PV8 ADI. This guy is spotted every time he calls CQ as P48 ADI out of Curacao because people recognize the P4 prefix, but PV is a relatively rare Brazilian prefix. I looked, in the last 3 weeks, He's been misreported under the wrong call sign 9 times. And what happens is the next guy who works him, oh yeah, I heard him too. I'm going to report the wrong call. And this just rolls on and on. If you want to see obsolete countries active on the air, I think it's Turkmenistan, EZ. Or Turkmenistan, one of those stands over there. Ham radio was banned there about 8 years ago. That was the EZ prefix. Yeah, and because it's run by a dictator, just like all the Russian countries. Once they split off, communism seemed to work for them, so they went straight to dictatorships.
You know how I
So,
feel about dictators.
yeah.
Rock and roll, baby.
Well, they don't allow them to have guns either, so not much they could do. But if you want to look up EZ prefixes, you search, you'll find them all over, reported regularly. The problem is they are really E7s out of Bosnia, reported by people who can't copy CW. And the next thing you know, this poor guy in Sarajevo has got a pile up, and he's going, what the heck? I'm not that rare. That's because he's been misreported. So the DX cluster is great, but assume a lot of the people have the same ability in ham radio as people do driving on I-70.
Proper rendering yourselves.
Yeah. DX bulletins, they're very easy to come by. A lot of them are just free. Just Google DX bulletins. There's a nice one, the 425 DX bulletin comes out of Italy once a week. Okay, Hans is going to 3B8 Mauritius. There's a guy, K7AR is going to Samoa. This is all what to look for on the air. So if you hear a call sign similar to that, to a 5W, oh okay, I know that 5W0AR is going to be on the air. The nice thing is a lot of these are free. And you don't even get cluttered up with spam. This is the other new addition, the reverse beacon. This is actually based on skimmer software, reversebeacon.net. This is all the software-defined radios out there. There's now software that works with them and can copy CW better than most hams can. And it just spits out call signs that it comes across calling CQ or QRZ. It's programmed to look for that. So this is just an example. All these spots were from K2VV. He just had his receiver set up. And these are all things that his computer picked up and reported on these frequencies, calling CQ, signal to noise ratio, and their CW speed. This is almost instantaneous. If you got this up, instead of watching the DX Summit, this is responding instantly. It's not waiting for somebody to report these stations. If you see a new CQ pop up there, you've got a good chance of going to that frequency and catching them. This will beat the cluster any day if you're paying attention, but it scrolls through pretty fast. This thing is almost faster than reading speed during a contest. This can also be used for checking your signal strength. As you'll notice, it does record signal to noise ratio. You can call CQ, your call sign. If you're being heard somewhere by one of these stations, it will pop up and report you, the speed you're sending. And if it gets your call wrong, it's probably because you sent it wrong. And it'll have your signal to noise ratio. And you can also check your antennas. If you move about 2 or 3 kilocycles, like that old word, kilocycles, 2 or 3 kilohertz, and call another CQ, it will update it again. You can be on a second antenna and see what the difference is. You can't do it on the same antenna. It'll only recognize your first CQ, but if you move a couple KCs, it'll trigger it again, and you can find out antenna B is louder than antenna A by 10 decibels in signal to noise ratio. So it's a handy little item. Other sources of help, just throwing in a plug. There is a local DX club called the Mississippi Valley DXing Contest Club. You know, it meets once a month. You know, it's mvddxcc.org. And it's not all heavy-duty DXers, but it's a lot of people who like to brag and hear stories. So, you know, just like this gang, this group here. And it also, this is the pool of volunteers that support the W0QSL Bureau. Just a quick talk about contesting. Basically, if you're looking to make a lot of DX contacts with a minimum of aggravation, you know, the contests are just the easiest route. It's just like going fishing into a stocked pond. Everybody's looking for somebody running 50 watts to a wet noodle because, you know, all the big guns have worked each other within the first 8 hours. Now they're starting to work, you know, the people all the way down into the background noise. This is when the QRP stations get on and start working DX because they know there's somebody out there who desperately wants them for a contact. The rules are all over. If you hear a bunch of people making short contacts on a weekend, you know there's a contest going on. Hornucopia.com, run by WA7BNM, is a good source of contest information. You can also find it in QST and CQ. The toughest thing is just what the exchange is. 90% of the contest is just a serial number. You give it a signal report and, hey, you're my contact number 1. It gets a little more complicated. You know, there's a lot of contesters who are getting bored or think it's too easy now. So they're kind of starting to come up with rules like, okay, the exchange is a signal report, a contact number, and the last 3 letters of the last guy you talked to. And now you're thinking, you're not just making contacts automatically. Now you're stressed. And that's the whole idea. The other exchange that'll stress you is the All Asia contest where you give out a signal report and your age. You can imagine how that's gone over the last 30 or 40 years. There's a lot of 90-year-old Japs and Americans working each other at this point. Women are allowed to send 00. In a contest, just throw your call out once. If he doesn't come back to you or anybody else, call again. But again, it's the unnecessary talking that actually slows things down. You know, chances are if you're the only one calling, he's going to get, you know, a good operator on the other end is going to catch your call the first time. And again, no 2 last letters in a contest. People on the other end are just going, they're moaning when they hear that. CW contesting, even if you're not a 30-word a minute person, there are probably very few people here who wouldn't recognize their own call on CW. If you're, you know, even sent at a much faster speed. If you've got a programmable keyer, especially the ones that will advance the serial numbers, you hear a guy come back to you, you know, assuming you figured out his call after a couple minutes, you hear somebody come back to you, all you got to do is push F1 on your keyer, you know, to go back to him. You're already pre-programmed. And you know he called you, even though he's sending too fast for you to copy a conversation, you recognized your call. So don't be intimidated by the overspeed. You can pull it off. Very little to say about station improvements. 2 points. If you're an elephant, big ears, tiny mouth, get an amplifier. If you're an alligator, big mouth, little ears, and you can't hear anything, get a better antenna. It's basically as simple as that. And just in terms of antennas, if you're on the WARC bands, these are the bands where people they've had their same TA33 up since 1971. They're never going to put up anything other than wires on 12 and 17. If you've got a 2 or 3 element beam, they're not that big. On those bands, you're going to kick butt. QSLing. It's still a part of the hobby. It's changed an awful lot. Nice, card back from the 1920s. That's pretty much, typical design. This one's out of Australia. Before they actually had prefixes assigned. Notice it's made up to NU1HJ, which used to mean North America, United States, first call area, before we were assigned prefix blocks. And I collect cards because, I just put this up here for vanity. That's my father's QSL I found when I was going to college. It was in the club's collection, his card from 1938. And things get a lot prettier, especially, you might recognize the card on the upper right. Exchanging QSLs is still a big deal. It's 100 years old, though. We've been doing this for 100 years, and it's getting a lot more complicated just because, hey, you're talking a physical piece of paper moving. Heck, even the post office is probably going to be dead in 5 years. For the time being, bulk cards are handled by a bureau system, which is basically groups bundle up cards, send them overseas where somebody unbundles them and redistributes them. As far as the redistribution, the W0 Bureau, I'm the manager of that. This is for incoming cards. They come either direct from other countries or ARL forwards big boxes that come from other countries. This is for anybody to use. You don't have to be a league member. It's open to all. All you got to do is basically pay for postage and envelopes. So, you just sign up at Incoming Bureau. All you got to do is go to the league's website and, under operating, and it'll talk about incoming and outgoing bureaus. The thing that has changed recently, the outgoing bureau, the ARL did not always have an outgoing bureau. It used to be up to you to bundle up all your cards for Germany and mail them to Germany, or go to somebody who did that for a business and pay by the pound. The league started doing that, 20 years ago. And they only do it for ARL members. And you pay by the ounce. And what just hit, though, is they've tacked on a $7 fee for each mailing. So if you're only sending in 10 cards and paying $1.30 for an ounce of them, a $7 fee is kind of out of line. The league is trying to beat down the amount of paperwork they have to handle. They're complaining that they have to support a person's salary for an entire year just for a bunch of selfish DXers. So I don't know how long the current bureau system will last. Right now, I've just been asked by ARL headquarters to report how many active people we have using the W0 Bureau. And I've got about 23 of our sorters reporting, and it looks like just in the zero land we've got about 2,200 users. So if you multiply that by 10 or 12 call areas, you're talking 20, 25,000 hams. That's a significant number of ARL or potential ARL members. So we're not a tiny minority. So that's QSLing by bulk, because granted, direct QSLing is expensive. We'll talk about that. You want a card from this guy you just talked to in Turkey. Okay, you're going to give it a shot. Rare DX stations expect you to pick up the postage. They're not as well off. So the two things are the International Clive Yukon and the green stamp, also known as the $1 bill. You will get about 80 to 85% results doing that method. The green stamps, though, it used to be $1. Typically, it takes $2 now, and $3 in a lot of countries. Italy's postal rate is obscene. It's like 2.3 euros. Germany, though, is at 75 euro cents. It's totally out of control. For a European community that's supposed to be homogenous, you've got everybody setting up his own rules. So, but you do have people who sell stamps. Well, before that, let's just talk of this. If nobody's seen the International Reply Coupon, these are dying off because post offices don't know what to do with them. This is where you go in, you spend $2 for this at a United States Post Office, or you used to, you mail it to a guy who can hand it in at his local post office, and it's supposed to cover the cost of mailing something back at his rate. The problem is let's say 90% of the people in post offices have no idea what to do with one of these. You walk into the Moscow Mills post office, they're clueless. I had to special order them while they were available. Finally, the United States stopped producing them. The United States will cash them, but they don't sell them. Interesting story behind the IRCs. This was the start of the original Ponzi scheme. Early 1920s, I forget his first name, Franco or whatever, Mr. Ponzi noticed that you could buy an IRC for the equivalent of 20 cents in Italy and cash it in for the equivalent of 30 cents in the United States. He sees arbitrage here, but you got to go big. So he starts looking for investors. This is Amway, almost 100 years ago. Yeah, you get in early, maybe. The problem is, after this all petered out, somebody ran the numbers and said, you're not going to make a profit until you do about 2 million of them. And there's only 100,000 printed a year. But the International Reply Coupon was the beginning of was the first documented Ponzi scheme. So they are dead. Mentioning foreign postage, you can buy German stamps, you can buy Lithuanian stamps. K2VV is doing that. There used to be another guy, Bill Plum, he just retired from the business. But K3 Fox November sells these, and he'll say, okay, you want a stamp from Cambodia, it's going to cost you $3, but you're going to get pretty good results, because here's what you're going to avoid: mail theft. That's where 2/3 of the non-responses go. You get into the third world, you've got people who will go through every piece of mail that comes from overseas, assuming if it's from America, it's probably got money in it. Now, if they see an IRC in it, they may be dumb enough to think that's money, or they may actually try to take it to a post office. But if they see a dollar bill, it's gone. And chances are they're not going to forward the empty envelope. So this is a common issue. This is a big problem with sending direct QSLs overseas, especially to your third world countries. They just don't get there. So if you're using a stamp, it's already on the envelope. If somebody opens it up, okay, he'll just put it through. But green stamps, they are at risk. Electronic QSLing, this is the last thing we'll be talking about. This is where QSLing is tending to go. Everybody's wondering, after 100 years, why are we still exchanging cardboard and paper? And the post office is wondering that too. And it's, everything can be electronically done. The problem is somebody's got to do the electronics. The league stepped in some years ago with Logbook of the World. Basically, if you've got a logging program, you can convert your data into a standard computer, ADIF file. It's got everything structured: time, date, country, call letters, and you can load it into this massive database, and the guy you're talking to, you're hoping loads it into the same database, and ARRL, if you go onto their website once you join up, will tell you, hey, we've got all these matches. As far as they're concerned, you've got a physical QSL card. If you want to apply for any kind of award that ARRL sponsors, you've got a good card. It's a complicated system, but once you're up and running, it's very easy to feed it. It's just, they've got a lot of protocols, security protocols on it, just so people don't cheat the system. Speaking of cheating the system, though, this is your alternative, EQSL, and this is where I get into arguments with a lot of the boys in the other club. EQSL is not, what you'd call high integrity. There are no standards for what appears on it. ARRL will not tell you you have a match to a contact, unless both your log and somebody else's are in there. You can't just look at some DX station's log. However, EQSL, if a guy dumps in a log and it's got your call in it, it's going to say, hey, here's a card for you. I've gotten cards for 1296 moonbounds from people. I don't do 1296 moonbounds. But it's very easy on EQSL to just go to it. Oh, yeah, click. I verified it. That is the problem with EQSL. The other issue is, I don't know how, do a lot of you bother with EQSL? It's got some reputation. It does count for some awards, but only if you basically apply twice. You can sign up for a membership. If you want your cards to count for awards, it's like $10 a year or something, something minor. But unless you take step 2 of becoming AG status, authenticity guaranteed, that means sending a copy of your license. That's all you got to do is scan it and email it in. You'll hear it back the next day. You are now guaranteed. If you don't do that, every contact you've submitted is the equivalent of a blank QSL. I don't know why people even bother. They see these cards loaded up in their inbox, but if they got any intention of applying for an award from CQ Magazine, or ARRL, well, actually, it's just CQ at this point, and they even hand out their own awards from EQSL, but unless the people on both sides of the contact have this AG status, it's like blank QSLs. I've got 500 in my inbox from guys, and the worst thing is, EQSL is so lousy about promoting this thing. It's one of these things over on the side it's like clicking, do you want to buy extra insurance? The kind of thing on any other website you'd ignore it. They don't make any point of, hey, you've just signed up, do you want to do EQSL? They don't do that. So what happens is a lot of people dump their logs in, not even thinking of that, and say, oh, my duty's done. Don't ask me anything more. They don't want to accept emails. Oh, no, I've given my log to EQSL. No, you've just handed out 2,000 blank QSLs. So if you're going to join the EQSL system, take that second step. So wrapping up, we're talking about the intimidation factor. I just wanted to give you an idea of what's out there. It can be a frustrating hobby. If you're trying to collect countries, you're going to have to go through pile-ups on some occasion. You're not always going to be the first one through unless you're really tricky or really loud. It's you're going to find you're dealing with non-QSLers. Things are going to get lost in the mail. But hey, driving on I-70 is a frustrating crapshoot too. So above all, remember, it's just a hobby. Enjoy. That's it. Questions, comments, better ideas?
Okay, any questions? I just had a comment. I remember one of my friends who used to have trouble getting QSLs from the Caribbean. He claimed his secret was he got envelopes from the mortuary, with that mortuary return address on it, so he had no trouble with losing stuff.
Yeah, I imagine the other thing is a law firm. At the moment.
John, thank you very much.
You are welcome, sir.
I appreciate you coming out and doing this today. We do have a little bit of business to take care of today, too, as Kevin's going to shut down there. So let me go to my list here. Couple of quick committee updates. Cliff, you want to tell us the next couple of programs coming up?
Well,